Hello, I'm Lorraine Keeley. Hi guys, and welcome to the latest Iris podcast, a place where we celebrate and love and spill that piping hot tea, mama, on all things LGBTQ+. I am your podcaster, your host, and clearly didn't get enough attention as a child, Kayed. Woo, woo, woo.
I'll just be here to give you validation. That can be my role in this conversation.
If you knew my friends, that would be so helpful to me. So if you could just occasionally through this interview, just keep telling me how much you love me.
That's so fine. Yeah, I love you.
Thank you so
That's
much.
really
I love you
okay.
too.
Yeah.
Well, he's already basically introduced himself, so I'll give him a little introduction. Today with us we have Marco, whose film Pompeii has been shortlisted for Best British Short, supported by Film 4. The winner of the Iris podcast. The winner of the Iris podcast. I'm the winner of the Iris podcast.
Facts.
The winner of Best British Short will receive services for the next film by Pinewood Studios and get a UK-wide audience on through Film 4 on all four. So, hi Marco.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm really well, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Thank you for coming to my house. Mi casa es tu
Honestly, it's stunning. I think I'm going to have to redesign mine because I've realised how substandard it is next to this.
casa. Yeah, I feel that for you. Where have you
Red
come?
for Phil. They just got here. Give me 10 minutes.
I told you.
Yeah.
Party, mama. So where have you come down from today?
I have come from London
Yes.
and it was a dreamy journey. I'd recommend it to everyone. I had this impression that coming from London to Cardiff was going to be a significant journey, but honestly it felt like 40 minutes, some nice views, some lovely trolley people offering me tea, and here I am.
Well, that's great. That sounds like a lovely journey.
Delicious.
Are you from London as well?
I am from London, yeah.
Whereabouts, if you don't mind telling people,
That's
so they
so
can stalk
fine.
you?
Yeah, sure. Well, if you want to stalk me, my address, I kind of moved all over the place. At the moment I live in Islington, which is dreamy.
And that's the blue one on Monopoly.
Yeah, nice.
See?
It is. Absolutely. Yeah, North London. It's lovely. Come along. We could do a podcast over there. I'll figure out something to talk about.
We just talk
Yeah,
about, just keep spilling tea.
Right, endless tea. Fine.
So I like to have a more relaxed feel to my interview. So I kind of treat them like speed dating,
Okay.
if that's okay for you.
Yeah, no.
And I feel like it's the best way to find out if we vibe and just get each other comfortable. So I'm just going to ask you some questions.
So fine.
Nothing too personal, maybe, but
I just feel like I'm learning a lot about you, that for you, speed dating involves you interviewing someone.
yes,
Because I don't think
it does.
most
I have a
people-
lot of criteria to check.
Sure.
What's your credit score? What's your blood type? Can you save me in an accident?
Okay, yeah. Those things are kind of all the same question, I think. Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry, you
well,
do your speed question.
No,
Yeah.
it's fine. You clearly want to do this. So, first question, which rings so true to me. What star sign are you?
Oh, Aries.
Are you?
Yeah. Oh, you did it like, what star sign are you?
I'm a Scorpio, obviously the best.
Okay, okay. A Scorpio would say that.
Yeah, they would, but an Aries would think that a Scorpio would say that.
Okay, right. You've got me there.
Yes. No, Aries is a good sign. They're very they're good leaders and they're good at getting shit done.
Yeah,
So-
that's because they're a ram, right?
Yes.
So they
just ram into everything.
That's it.
Take that as you will, people who are listening.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh gosh.
he's not single, guys, so
Yeah, sorry, but he's also not wrong. Anyway, I hate myself.
no, don't we all?
Yeah, this
Isn't
is
that why
true.
we're
Yeah,
here?
that's
Next question that I have here. What is the most embarrassing thing that you've ever done or has happened to you?
Oh man. Oh
There are just so many.
yeah. No, I'm just drowning in traumatic, embarrassing memories.
And shame.
Mostly shame. What's the most embarrassing? What's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you? I need a second. And you've asked a question, which means that something embarrassing's happened to you.
That, do you know what? This hasn't happened to me yet where someone's
you
flipped
go.
it around on me and this is really stressful. I think the most embarrassing thing that has happened I don't get embarrassed that easily. I'm shameless.
So that's why you feel comfortable asking that question.
Yeah, and mainly because I do so many embarrassing things that if it was going to bother me by now, I would have just locked myself in a hole.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've actually spent the last 5 years in a hole
In
that
a
I
hole?
locked myself in due to embarrassing things I did prior to that moment. So
All right, well,
sharing it might risk me having to go back
Yeah.
into the hole for a while, and I've just got out. I'd rather not.
yeah, I get that PTSD.
Yeah.
Well,
Probably the answer is probably something to do with performance. I was in a singing group, and there was actually it's a bit yeah. So I was covering someone else's solo, and it's in front of. It was a kind of campus tour. So we're in the US, and there were hundreds of people that I'd never seen before, and they'd kind of kindly come to sit and watch us sing. And I was covering this guy's solo, and it's the first time I was doing it, and I got cocky and thought I could sing higher than him. And so there's this big super extra moment where you slide up a note like slowly and then hit that top note and like hold it for a while. And I was like really milking it, taking my time, like halfway up this note, and then realized I just wasn't going to get there. So I was like just really slowing that, and just kind of like taking my time and slowing down more and more until I had to just stop. And like everyone was watching, wait for the moment, stopped and started again, and just did a different version of it. And I mean, I never did that solo again, but I wanted to die. And then I moved into the whole, and
I see the progression now. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly.
I mean, we've all been there. We've all backed ourselves more than we
That's the one.
absolutely should. Yeah. And my last question, just so you know, this is going quite well. I'm already thinking of second date.
Great. I'm so excited.
What is your favourite thing about yourself?
Oh my gosh. What is my favourite thing about myself?
Everyone always struggles with this question, but
because we are bred to hate ourselves.
Exactly, but I feel like I'd like to encourage people to say more nice things about themselves.
Yeah, you know what? It's my. Okay, I'm going to go LGBT on this.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's like having come into my campness and who I am and all of that stuff, you know? It takes them in, and you're told as a kid that that's not how you should act. And so I've got there, and I've kind of got to that moment finally where the other day someone heckled me and said, me and my boyfriend, whilst we were walking down the street, they started calling us batty boys. And we were both there, not even anxious anymore. We were just like, yes. And they were like, you batty boys. And we were like, yes.
Hi.
And just no longer, I was like, I've got over that hump. I'm fine now. So I'm proud of that. There you go.
That's really good. That's lush. And also, it's such a horrible stigmatism that if you're gay, you can't be camp that, right. or you can't be masculine. Yeah. Why can't you be all of it and none of it and just sit where you want?
I think this is really hard. I think people, it's also there's the practice, the theory of kind of recognizing what being femme means and kind of gender performance and all that stuff, and recognizing things are constructs and you should act how you want to act. And then there's the lived experience of actually being I am completely comfortable and I'm not going to be made to feel uncomfortable because of the fact that this isn't how everyone else in this room is expecting me to act, or these are strangers and they're being like, oh, okay, you're that person, and I just don't care anymore.
Good.
Which is great. I'm proud. I actively care. I'm proactive about it.
So you care and don't care.
It's now become my answer to what's your favorite thing about you. There you go.
Good. No, it was a great answer. Yeah. And also gives me a really nice segue without me having to try too hard about now talking about your film, which is great because we're talking about constructs in the gay community. Yeah, let's segue.
Sure.
So Pompeii, what was your inspiration behind making the film? What was it that you felt that you wanted to achieve with it?
Right. Yes. So there's a couple different entry points into making that film. So first of all, I guess to people who haven't seen it or haven't heard about it or anything, it's Pompeii was made with multiple directors. It's quite kind of unconventionally shot. Most of it's on an iPhone with some gorgeous 16mm stuff shot by the incredible Molly Manning Walker as a kind of device that ties everything together. So when we approached the film, when we kind of first began thinking about it, it was all kicked off by Harry Lighton, who is one of my co-directors, and we were all at London Film Festival a couple of years ago, and Harry and I had a film in there. Matt was doing the Flair mentorship scheme and was there in that capacity, and we were all having the best time, and we're thinking, none of us have films in the works that we can then apply for the next year's London Film Festival with. So what can we maybe think of something fun to do together in a kind of guerrilla way that would just give us a shot at applying and being in the festival again. And so that's how Harry kind of kicked off this idea that we'd work together. And then in terms of the actual content of the film, a dear friend of ours, Tamray Gwabadia, wrote an article for ID about his experience of being rejected at the door to a club in London called XXL, which is actually now closed, but I think they're trying to reopen. More on that later. And he was rejected from at the door essentially for presenting to femme for this a supposedly queer space. And that we found that kind of, for the obvious reasons, that's pretty horrendous and problematic. And we wanted to explore that idea of the kind of, even though we want queer spaces to be safe spaces and they're designed to bring together community and stuff, to kind of shine a bit of a light or explore what it means to be marginalized within a space, within that kind of space, what those microaggressions look like. So that was it's what Tam's article explores, and we took that as our launch pad.
Sweet. That's great. That was so much information to take in at one. I'm just like sort of reeling from it. So it sounds like there was so much that went into it and like a lot of thought behind it, obviously, because it's a great film. It is a really good film, by the way, guys.
Really kind of you. Thank you.
But a lot of like different sort of experiences and different ideas were went into it. Just going back to the phone, why was the choice that you wanted to film it on a phone or have that look to it?
Yeah, well, so I mean, firstly, it was just that we just wanted to jump straight into it, and we didn't have any funding. It was produced by Sarah Bacon from Try Hard Films, and she was incredible at kind of mobilizing us and making this all happen. And but we kind of all agreed initially that we wanted to do something that was quite light on its feet and experimental. And so the first kind of shoot we did as part of the film was on Halloween, your birthday, I believe. See, first date smash.
You've read my Grindr profile. Thank you so much.
You share too much on your Grindr
I really
profile.
do.
You didn't. That's not. Don't give people that information.
How will they send me gifts?
Yeah, fine.
No one sends me gifts. Please send me things.
Yeah, so everyone, his birthday's Halloween. So just note to audience. So on Halloween, 2 years ago, we grouped together. I can't remember now, like 10, 15 pals of ours. And we kind of gathered this like little queer mob and paid for everyone to get into a club night, a drag night on Halloween in London, and told everyone to basically do a really extra Instagram story style kind of film of their night out. So just to document as much as they could on their phones. So we kind of upgraded everyone's phones so that they were like filming the highest quality their phones could and all of that stuff. And then just said, honestly, go out and have the most fun you can. Just do, be you, but just kind of be conscious of recording stuff and allow the kind of narrative arc of your night to just play out as it will, and we'll see what we come up with. And so we were kind of just that was the idea, and so we ended up with just hours and hours of like 15-second clips from this night out, and wanted to see what emerged from that kind of around these themes that we were interested in. And so filming on iPhone, to answer your question, was the only way to really do that. And it allowed this kind of lightness on our feet. It allowed us to kind of access lots of different people's perspective and also explore what it means to, in the kind of, it's almost like a documentary vibe in that sense, to give these people agency to film their own night out and see what different people's version of that night is when they're totally in control of how we see their night. Yeah,
for sure. And also there was a great thing about doing it on the phone. You could see how, like, even though you knew time had passed, you could see how the vibe of everything was changing and how everyone was feeling, and without having to be like, in some films where like, because it's over a gradual period of time, you slowly get to it. I was like, oh my God, this has happened. And then, oh yeah, that does happen when people are drunk or when the D is involved. Yeah. Because we all know we've been there. So I just want to talk about certain parts of the film. So, when they're on the subway on the tube and Tam is getting like loads of weird looks.
Yes.
And why do you think that people still feel like they need to sort of give sort of judgment on that?
Right. Yeah. So to kind of explain the context in the film, Tam is the kind of framing device around the night out in the kind of Instagram story element of it. Is a sequence of Tam on the tube, taking the first tube the next morning, watching this Instagram story back. And at various points, kind of passengers that get on shoot certain glances and look at him in a certain way. So Tam at this point is wearing high-waisted denim trousers and high-waisted, also known as jeans, and
yes,
high-waisted denim trouser. And a kind of really small white crop top and big hoop earring. Why do people kind of give evils or kind of give weird glances when people are dressed in a way that isn't how they would dress? I don't know. It's a big question. I guess like insecurity, looking down on something, feeling like it's inappropriate. I think that really bothers me, and that's definitely what part of this is about. Is that it's no one else's business, and if that's that person's particular kind of mode of self-expression, if that's just how that person feels best that day. You have no idea why someone dresses the way they dress. It might be how they feel most comfortable in their own body. Like get off, like give them some space, let them do that. And in those particular sequences, so we were filming it kind of documentary style at times, and so it was guerrilla, most of it. And so those particular shots of people giving Tam evils, they are just passengers on the tube. They're not cast. Everyone was aware we were filming. It was clear that we were filming in the space and that people were in the kind of the view of the camera, so they were going to be seen, and they were aware of that. And yet they're still kind of happily like scowling just at someone just because they're dressed a bit differently. So yeah, I don't know.
Jeez, I can't believe they were actual.
I mean, I guess part of it's also them looking at this crew being like, what are they doing? But I don't know. From the way you've described it, that speaks to how I see it when I describe it. I think it's a look I recognize, right?
Yeah, no, of course. And like most people in this community or of any sort of minority know that look, and they can say that it was for the camera or whatever,
right.
But you know what that look is in the eye.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad we're there. Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Solved.
Thank you so much.
Where's my check?
Yeah, it's in the mail. So there's a line that Tam's friend says to him when they're out, and he says to him like, "Oh, Tam doesn't like hairy guys."
Yes.
And Tam then comes back with being like, actually, one of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
I'm an equal opportunist.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which is,
he goes, "I'm an equal opportunity employer." Yeah. I mean, 10 out of 10. Also, just to jump in and say, like, all the dialogue was improvised. Like that is Tam's line. Like Tam is a very funny human.
Tam.
Yeah, good work. Yes. Sorry.
No, it's fine. And yeah, even though Tam sort of like goes against what his friend's saying, there is some still sort of that in the like queer culture, in my experience with gay men, where there's like specifying what you like and sort of excluding everything else that you don't. And I just wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah. I think it's really tricky, isn't it? I think there's a kind of people have their particular preferences, sexual preferences, and I think it's just really it's quite insidious, right? Because it's very difficult to tell where a kind of completely kind of inoffensive, just matter of taste is playing out versus some kind of slightly more insidious conditioning. In the context of the film, Tam's friend that Dave is saying that Tam's uncomfortable with going to this particular club that they've decided to go to as a kind of like second wind in the night. They kind of go on to a second club because it's this like masculine, like beefy, the clientele are like kind of beefy mask blokes, yeah. And Tam's pushing back at the idea of going there, and Dave says like, oh yeah, Tam doesn't want to go because he hates hairy guys. And it's kind of gaslighting because, I mean, what's happening is Tam is uncomfortable because he will not fit in that space and not receive any kind of validation there. He'll be made to feel less than. And Dave is playing it as if it's Tam's fault for not liking the people that are going to be there. So, yeah, I think it's a kind of double-edged moment that's quite tricky.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, I mean, they're tricky spaces, right? I always make a joke that gay clubs are like a nature documentary. Like all you're missing is David Attenborough, like on the balcony at Heaven, being like, the young twink approaches the other young twink.
Oh my God! Could you imagine that if they were like, the muscle daddy stalks around the club looking for a young vulnerable twink.
Yeah, the twink's colours are too bright. The muscle daddy is put off. Like it's that level.
Yeah,
of,
no,
it's,
totally
it's so non-verbal, and yeah, it's that element of it where it's just kind of glances across a room, staking people out, like looking people up and down, making decisions, and like nothing being said, and your entire person being judged and rejected, or judged and accepted, whatever. In those spaces is so tense, and that's kind of what Tam's article so kind of brilliantly describes is. His really difficult experience of being a femme black person going into certain kind of queer majority white spaces that are and being made to feel less than or kind of an exceptional body that is out of place or put on a pedestal, which is a different kind of stress. Yeah,
no, you're totally right. And like this whole like our generation now in particular, like even with like Tinder and Grindr and all that stuff. Like, it's so like, this is the appearance, and you can assume whatever you want from that, and then you get like a bio to make yourself come across the best way you can,
Right.
And then people are just gonna kind of make their own assumption anyway, basically on like giving you like a split second to like, and it's just something that I always find interesting. And then so then they get to the club. They get to the club.
Get to the club.
Get into the club. Into the club. So they get to the club, and I'm guessing he's the club owner, or guy on the door is turns around and he's like, "You're not coming in. You're wearing a hoop." He says something like, "If you want to like," I'm very much paraphrasing, but if you want to wear girls' clothes, then you can like fuck off with the girls who just left. And it's this like, even in like the queer community, there's discrimination in like what is okay for us. And I just, like you said, like Tam feeling vulnerable in a place where he's like a black femme guy, which is already like hard enough, and then to be sort of like excommunicated, banished from like your own place.
And I mean, so in this instance, it's an earring. I don't know how much that speaks to the kind of XXL, like the club that we were inspired by. I don't know. I don't think that's quite their dress code. I think it's more to do with like heels or like strappy tops and things like that. Too much like maybe makeup as well. It's obviously shit. I mean, you would hope that a queer space would be conscious of what it means to be policed, and to then get to the door, and in that, so say it's a crop top, be told, well, if you take it off, you can come in. So if you are happy to be partially naked, you can come in on the condition of your partial nudity. Then otherwise, you have to stay outside, and like your friends can go in, but you can't. It's really problematic, and it's what message is that saying about femininity or femme guys? It's kind of maintaining and putting on a pedestal a kind of very strict notion of masculinity that is being celebrated and fetishized at the very specific what's the word, kind of
like home, like the place where we should all feel safe and welcome.
Yes.
You're going to there because they're like whether you call them gay clubs, straight clubs, whatever, but I know that I don't mind going into clubs where it's majority straight, but I feel more relaxed when I'm around people of my nature. So it's must have been really stressful for Tam to go to there and then be like, this is my like haven, and you're like telling me no.
Right. And exactly. And it's exactly, and they're kind of doing something which is in their eyes just privileging a certain sexual preference, but it's that it's at the expense of people, and it's also, you don't, certain things go under the radar maybe, and if there are non-binary people in that space or trans people in that space that are then made to feel really uncomfortable, as if at any point they might then be told that they're not welcome in that space. I don't know. And just the thing that particularly got under our skin was that whilst we were filming, because we filmed over multiple nights over the course of about a year, XXL shut down, and then they were about to reopen, and they were seeking funding. I think like local council funding, I'm not sure, but they were seeking funding and like release some decks about like what the space was going to be. And in their kind of little piece of writing, they said XXL is a like extremely important LGBTQ plus space that is like a linchpin of the community and a really important space for the LGBTQ plus community. And it's like, how dare you have the audacity to invoke like the importance of this space for lesbians, women who are not allowed into that space, trans people, when you actively exclude them and make them feel like shit, and tell them that they're not welcome in that space, or they're not desirable. Their bodies aren't desirable bodies, and therefore they're not allowed in here. It was incredibly hypocritical and problematic. Screw them.
You were riled. She mad.
Yeah,
no, but rightly so. Yeah. Like how that's really pissed me off, because like you said, discriminating people based on their I use the word category, but I don't mean that, where they fit on the spectrum of queer,
how they present,
and then turning around to be like, but when we need money, we're all
yeah,
here.
we're gonna, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's two things, right? Either they genuinely don't recognize the kind of the violence that involves excluding certain people from the space, which is why they think they can say they're an LGBTQ plus club space, because they don't recognize the violence they're doing, in which case that's myopic and dangerous. Or they do, and that kind of adds, which is what I think, and it adds a whole extra kind of level of sinister behavior where they're saying, like, we know what we're doing. We're going to kind of celebrate the bodies we celebrate, exclude the people we exclude, and then take funding that's designed specifically to fund spaces that are community spaces, or spaces that are meant to serve a wider community than the one we're serving.
That shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's annoyed me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to end this interview now and go cry. So I'm going to move it on to a more, I think it's a more uplifting part.
Sure.
Let's talk about the sex.
Yeah, okay.
Because there is so much, first of all, I watched this when I was in Cornwall, and I was sitting on a beach outside a little cafe.
Stan.
And was
perfect place.
giving a film a little watch,
Yeah.
and then it all
happens.
goes down. So question 1.
Yes.
Is it real sex?
Oh, that's means that it was well shot that you think that, but no.
Okay. And then my
question
follow-up question to that is, how do they do it?
Right.
Not like I know how gay how gay sex works. Like,
when two people love each other very much, or don't know each other at all, and just
have met each other for 3 seconds,
yeah.
or text you and said "What up" at 2 a.m. They have the sex.
It happens. The sex. They have the sex. Love
the
it.
intercourse.
We had the incredible experience of working with a intimacy coordinator. Mm-hmm. So there was no rehearsal in our film, because most of it was improvised except for that scene, and I think it shows from what you're saying, which is great. And I could, to anyone that is shooting a sex scene, not only does it make your film significantly better to have a intimacy coordinator, but I think it's a must, just in terms of making sure that actors feel kind of safe. And we had this incredible experience of going off and working with an intimacy coordinator who took us through this process of allowing the actors to give each other consent to where they can touch on each other's bodies, looking at references for like the way different people carry themselves. We're actually looking at like animals. They use an animal. It's quite funny. They use footage of animals having sex, and they talk about like what different animal you're channeling, and it's a way of like having quite an explicit conversation without just problematically like looking at porn, and which is like weird. And anyway,
I'm really sorry. I just
I know.
I need to get this out a second.
No, please. It was
does everyone have like a sex animal?
So
like, do we all have sex animals?
Yeah, and it was actually really Well, I think it's like also, it's not that a person necessarily is a certain animal. It's like within different dynamics between people, like, that animal coupling acts in a certain way that, some of them are quite aggressive, for example, and that becomes quite a good reference if you're trying to do some, create a scene that's quite has an imbalance of power, for example. But so in this instance, we were just like looking at different animals, and that served as our reference initially to start from, and then it becomes this process of blocking it, but having kind of given full consent for bodies, spoken about it until it's become really kind of the electricity of it has slightly gone out of the room, right? It becomes just a really pragmatic conversation about like where you're going to stand, how many times do you thrust into someone, like what turning point do they in our context like ask for them to spit on it to get lube, and it becomes those things would be like quite excruciatingly awkward maybe if you were just doing what they did in the past and just kind of turning up and be like, we'll just do it in the moment, and people come in and it's all very stressful and awkward, and then people come out of it having gone through something they probably didn't want to go through. It completely kind of solves all of that. So it was incredible. So we were able to give really specific notes, block it really, really intricately, and then give notes in the room and be like, okay, a bit faster this time. And it's a bit funny, but like it can be, because no one's awkward or no one's embarrassed anymore.
But also, like, I kind of wish all sex was like that. Because I feel like everyone would have that, like, if you're like, guys, we're going to do like an hour rehearsal, we're going to give notes, and we're going to make sure everyone's comfortable and everyone's getting the things that they need. But honestly, I'm trying to wrap my brain and think of a film that I've seen which didn't have real sex in it. That it literally, I was like, that is the sex.
So
it was
great.
I'm
so glad.
It really came across.
Yeah, well, we owe that entirely to our intimacy coordinator. And yeah, a funny side note is like trying to find a location and be like, hello, we would like to film in your bathroom. It's totally above board and not what you're thinking, but yes, people will be having sex in a stall, but it's not real sex. But if you come in, you are not going to think that. It was an experience.
It sounds
yeah.
like...
Luckily, I didn't have to have that conversation. Sorry, I did.
but you just had to have it with me,
right? Yeah, but you know, you're fine.
Okay.
We can have those conversations.
Ask my exes that, they won't say that. So with the sort of like sexual part of it, it sort of leads me to this, the train of thought that what game... That's a horrible generalization. I don't mean that. What, in my experience, I've seen sex does to men.
Yeah.
And like it becomes this like almost like driving like animalistic force where all of a sudden you're not really aware of what's happening, and all of this on your mind is the D. Thought?
Yeah.
Discuss.
Yeah, thoughts discuss.
Thoughts and discuss.
Explain, 20 marks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think and the fun of slightly improvising elements and allowing the story to go off in different directions allowed for the different characters, the different actors and their characters to kind of push in certain directions based on what felt realistic to them, having got to where we'd got in the story and having filmed what we'd filmed. And so I think Dave does that so well, David Shield, in there being this kind of switch moment where he's having fun and it's all about being part of the group, and then slowly he begins to tunnel vision and what he's looking for is quite specific. And for a moment, maybe Tam represents that kind of endpoint in his night, and then actually for the kind of various reasons that play out in the film, he like shifts his focus and casts cruelly and quite like abruptly and horribly casts Tam aside and abandons him in a way that's really unpleasant. And yeah, I think they kind of caught that really well, especially in terms of that thing of kind of the D being causing drama. Is just, the choice to have the club owner, who's initially been a complete arsehole to them both, end up being the person that sleeps with Dave. I think it's just like that extra little twist of the knife, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be pissed. But Tam handled it very well, because I would be tipped. I'd be dragging my friend out by their hair, being like, you will never leave me.
Well, I mean, if we're following an Instagram story, he has posted it online, which is problematic.
Actually, he has like absolutely rinsed them. And then also it gets to like the end, and we always talk about this coming togetherness with like the gay community and stuff, and obviously it starts with Tam watching the video with all his friends together, but like it slowly like becomes, you see the lonelier side of it, and like also as well, like you see the numbers of his viewers go down, and I don't know if that was something that was intentionally was it internally done, but you just start feeling like, oh, this loneliness for him, and like how isolated sometimes it can make you feel when you don't feel like, I know that I can say as like a mixed race gay man that like the number of times I've heard guys say like, oh, I don't date black guys. Oh, nothing personal. I'm not into black guys, and you kind of just go, oh yeah.
It's quite personal,
but
actually.
It's actually real personal. But like you go into clubs where you first weren't in, and then the club rejects you for how you look, and then your friend rejects you. Yeah. Like.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a bleak story, and I'm like really conscious of wanting to like make queer films that are optimistic and I think kind of buoyant and made to feel queer people that otherwise might feel marginalized and alone feel together and held. And other films do that. Watch all our other films in our group, because we do that to a promise. But in this particular instance, I think there's a seriousness, there's a severity to what happens, and there is, I think, hopefully something quietly redemptive in like his complicated, but that the revenge element of posting that guy the sex online, and there's a twisted empowerment that is, I guess, the question for the audience is like, do you feel that that's it's a problematic thing, obviously a very problematic thing to post someone else having sex online without their consent, for that particular character, you know, has your journey watching it led you to a point where you understand it and recognize that these things are really messy, and like that was a gesture that he made to kind of regain a sense of power that's been taken from him quite cruelly. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of on the bleaker end of how things end. There is something I think that is intrinsic to Tam, which is a certain kind of inner strength and power that I find really moving, that I think he carries at the end there, even though he is alone and clearly uncomfortable. I guess the question is whether, you know, we want to stop people having to just have that reserve and hold themselves together and be more conscious of them, and create, you know, spaces that are more sensitive to that kind of microaggressive exclusion that people experience in those clubs and spaces.
No, I totally get it, and you can definitely feel that. I know I talk about that loneliness, but also that like strength that he's by himself and he's just processing it in his own way. So you definitely feel that. I'm really sad to say that we're running out of time now, because I'm really enjoying this, and you know, just it's been such a good time. Right,
we'll do date 2 in Islington, right? And that's the other podcast. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
This never happens. Don't ask me to go to date 2, so I don't really know what to say to that. No, it's been great. I just have one last question for you, and then we can wrap up. Will you give me a 5-star rating on my Uber?
Oh my God, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And there's like those little things that you can choose underneath as well, like good conversation.
Thank you.
A solid drop off.
Thank
all
you.
those things. Yeah.
Cheers. No, honestly, it's been so great having you.
It's been such a pleasure. Thanks
Guys,
for having me.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to us. He's been Nick. You haven't been Nick.
Depends on the day. Sometimes I'm Nick.
I don't even know who is Nick.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's it.
He hasn't been Nick.
Yeah, 0 stars on Uber.
Sorry, who is Nick?
Have you interviewed a Nick?
Yes.
Well, there we go.
Oh, God, sorry, Nick. You're gonna kill me.
I don't know whether that means he's not memorable enough, or he's so memorable that he's like.
This won't make the edit anyway, so I'm not even stressing about this too much. Thanks, guys, for subscribing and tuning in. He's been Marco. I've been Oh my God.
You got your own name wrong now.
Right.
Should we just do a Trixie and Katya? Thanks for tuning in. I've been Michelle Gomez.
And I'm Taylor Swift. Let's try one more time. Thanks, guys, for subscribing and listening. He's been Marco. I've been using humor as a defense mechanism. We hope to see you soon, and thank you for listening. Bye, guys.
Bye. I'm still Marco.
Are you still Marco?
I've not been Marco. I'm like still Marco.
Yeah, I get that, but still, you have been.
I have been Marco
up
until this point. Yeah. I'll continue to be Marco hereafter. Fine.